Oi, gente, tudo bem com vocês? Hoje eu tô aqui com a minha sogra e eu vou fazer um vídeo que eu prometi pra vocês já há muito tempo sobre sistema de saúde aqui nos Estados Unidos. Pra quem não sabe, a minha sogra trabalha com isso, então meu cunhado, o filho dela, é médico e ela trabalha na clínica dele. Ela gerencia tudo, ela lida com os planos de saúde. Right, I'm saying that you work in the clinic. Your son is a doctor, so you understand, you have the knowledge how it works better than me.
Yeah.
You know? Então,
I work with billing problems.
ela trabalha na cobrança de pagamento. Então, ela tem uma planilha do Excel no trabalho dela, ela liga para a provedora do seguro de saúde. Então, ela sabe muito disso. Então, vou fazer algumas perguntas para ela sobre o sistema de saúde aqui nos Estados Unidos, para esclarecer um pouco isso para vocês. Então, eu botei aqui, são poucas perguntas, porque eu tenho certeza de que ela vai ter muita coisa para falar. A primeira pergunta é como que funciona o sistema de saúde aqui nos Estados Unidos, de uma forma geral.
There's a few different forms. If you're working, you have to have a job that has enough money to pay for your insurance. Not all businesses can do that, but bigger companies generally help pay for the insurance, and then the person who works at the place pays for the other part. So both put into the insurance. That's one portion. Older people have something that's 65 and older have what's called Medicare. And that's where people who have worked put into the system while they're working so that when they get older, they will have health insurance. Not everybody does that, but most people do. So when you get 65, you have something generally that's called Medicare.
And it's cheaper than a regular insurance.
Yeah, well, it depends, but generally people put in a small portion, maybe $100 a month or so. It's a lot if all you get is $500 to live on. That's almost impossible, and there are people that do that. So taking $100 out of $500 is a lot of money for health care as you're aging.
Right.
So it's horrible. Everybody should have free health care, in my opinion. So then you have your working, what I call working poor and almost poor. And they don't have health care. And they don't make enough to pay for insurance. So they're stuck in this area, okay? So that you just don't have health care. The Affordable Care Act that Obama did said if you're in that category of working poor, the government will help. They will subsidize you paying for your insurance. So Obamacare was made because so many working poor could not afford to pay for their insurance, and their employer didn't pay for their insurance. And so what Obamacare came in and did was say the government will subsidize it. So they figure how much you make and how much they'll pay. It also says that the types of insurances you have, they can't deny you because you have what's called a pre-existing condition.
Right. That was a big thing.
Yeah. It's very big. Because pre-existing condition could be you had a cesarean when you had a child, or you have high blood pressure, asthma, anything. Yeah. Any kind of illness that you had before, they can deny you insurance. So it made it impossible for some people to get insurance if you've had anything. And if you've had something serious, they really were denying you, like cancer or heart attacks. So Affordable Care Act, which is called Obamacare, did that. They also made it so because insurance, you could be paying for a really expensive insurance, $2,000 a month. This is what my brother was doing and his wife.
Wow.
They were paying close to $2,000 a month. They don't make that much money. So paying $2,000 a month to have health care was really expensive. And then you get this health care and you think you're covered until something happens. And then they have this thing within the insurance that's called a deductible. And a deductible could be, before Affordable Care Act, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. So in other words, what a deductible is, the insurance wouldn't pay anything until you've paid that much on doctor bills.
Wow.
So you could be paying $2,000 a month. You get sick. You break a bone, which is what happened to my sister-in-law. She broke a bone. Going to the hospital and fixing the bone in the hospital and having an overnight stay because it was complicated was well over $20,000.
She had to pay for it?
So she had to pay. So why have insurance?
Yeah.
You know, because they could go to the hospital and have a heart attack and have it be $100,000 or $200,000. Even within that policy with a deductible, they don't pay 100%.
Right.
A good policy would, but those are expensive. So they may only pay 80% or 50%. So you still end up with a bill. So all these things were issues. Affordable Care Act came in and said you can't have those real high deductibles. So sometimes you'll have a $2,000 deductible and maybe a $5,000 for a family. But you don't have any more of these $20,000 deductibles.
Oh, okay.
So it wiped
that
that
changed.
out.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes somebody that, say, makes $15, $20 an hour could get their insurance free, depending on where they live and how much their cost of living is.
Okay.
Because what was happening before is middle class and poor people were deciding, heck with insurance. Why should I pay for it?
Right.
And they were just gambling. And then when people get sick and you couldn't get any insurance, you would just go to the emergency room. And the emergency room, by law, has to take you.
Okay.
So there were all these unpaid bills. And the hospitals are going bankrupt because nobody's paying the hospital. So it was a mess. And so Affordable Care Act came in and tried to help clean up this mess.
Okay.
It still isn't that. It isn't where we should be. Medicine is actually really expensive for people.
Really expensive.
Really expensive.
For citizens,
Yeah.
it's very expensive.
And the
So-
doctors aren't making money. Because then the insurances will just decide not to pay.
So who really makes money is the insurance.
Insurances are making so much money. And when insurance started out, it was a non-profit. It was there to help people. It isn't any longer. It's huge business.
Right.
Huge business. Along with the pharmaceutical companies. So the pharmaceutical companies go to Washington with more money than we have to run California to make laws so they can keep making massive amounts of money. Something that used to cost, like for asthma, you know, the inhaler,
Right.
it used to cost $5 or $10, maybe 15 years ago. They packaged it different, and they now charge probably about $300 at one point they were charging.
Wow.
It was massive, massive. And they do that all the time.
Right.
So our pharmaceuticals, it's not like when I was in Brazil and I could walk in and I could get pharmaceuticals really reasonable.
Yeah, really cheap.
Really cheap. Here, not the case. If you don't have insurance, you probably can't afford your pharmaceuticals. So poor people go without pharmaceuticals too. So we have a very, very broken medical system. So then we have what's for the poor people. It's almost easier to be poor, really poor. So you have to be what really would be extremely poor to get free health care.
If you don't pay, this is not me free. So if you don't pay the bill, what happens to you? If you go, go to the emergency or you have cancer or something, and you don't pay the bill, what are the consequences?
So, the number one reason in our country for people filing what's called bankruptcy, and what bankruptcy is filing with the courts that you can't pay your bills. If you file bankruptcy, you can't get loans, you often can't rent an apartment, can't get a car loan, you can't get... It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's the number one reason for bankruptcy is medical bills.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I mean, yeah, it makes sense because...
Oh, it's terrible.
It is.
Yeah. Now, if you were to just not pay the bill, the hospital or the doctor could take you to court, or they could we have here in this country something called a credit rating. And that's also real important because it'll make your credit rating go down. So then you can't do all those things again, like buy cars, homes,
Right.
rent a house, all those things if your credit rating is too low.
What happened was he had cancer and he had to do the treatment. But he could do the treatment. He did the treatment, right?
Yes.
But I remember you were calling and calling because you're the 9 something. What was
Yes.
that?
Okay, so he was working, had a job, but they often in the United States, employers don't want to pay you benefits. It's very expensive for employers to pay for benefits.
Yeah.
So he all of a sudden gets cancer. So we don't know this.
Just because I said why I didn't even introduce him. Gente, só pra clarear aqui, a gente tá falando, só porque eu vou botar legenda, então vai ficar um pouco complicado de vocês entenderem, mas ela tá falando de uma situação que aconteceu com... Can I say your boyfriend?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
My partner.
Your partner. Só pra falar pra vocês que isso que ela tá contando agora foi uma situação que aconteceu com o namorado dela. Então, ele teve câncer e eu lembro da minha sogra ligar todos os dias para as operadoras de planos de saúde porque eles não queriam fazer um exame nele que era essencial. Então, o Dwight é o namorado dela. Ela tá contando a história do que aconteceu com ele recentemente. Okay, so...
Yeah. So, he's working. He has a spot on his lung he needs to check. So... just to do that is an x-ray. It's a few $100s. He could do that, right? So they realized that the spot could be serious. So he schedules more tests to find out, thinking that he could get Medi-Cal for poor people. So he go ahead and has the test because they kind of know it's cancer and that it's serious. So he gets the test done, and they tell him, yes, it's cancer. We have to operate. We have to do it quick. So he has to stop doing his job. As soon as he stops doing his job, he's eligible for all the benefits of being poor. He's poor.
Medicaid, right?
Medicare.
Medi-Cal. Okay,
Yeah.
Medi-Cal.
Yeah, it is called Medicaid for United States, it's called Medicaid. For California, it's called Medi-Cal.
Okay.
So he's immediately eligible for Medi-Cal because we're in California. But he has no money.
Right.
So all the other tests that he did to find out he had cancer and that he couldn't work were about $30,000 worth of tests. Because they had to do an MRI, that's about $5,000. They do a biopsy, that's about another $15,000. They do various x-rays to all these doctors to determine he has cancer and that he needs an operation and he can't work. He made that month $1,200.
Okay.
The cutoff was around $1,100. So instead of saying, well, maybe you could pay a part of it, they didn't pay anything. So he's stuck with a $30,000 bill.
Oh, he's still stuck with it.
He's still stuck with it. And he can't work because of COVID, because of they had to take out part of his lung.
Right.
And he can't be exposed. He's older.
Yeah.
So he can't work. He can't pay that bill. And yet they won't pay it. And he couldn't pay $30,000.
No, even like if you have a nice job, it's hard.
Oh, $30,000
Yeah.
would be real hard.
Really
hard.
And this situation, Dwight's situation is like so
Totally
many
common.
people's. Yeah,
Totally
it's
common. Totally common. What happens is people begin to not care about the bill.
Yeah.
If your credit's messed up, why would you care about any bill? Right?
Yeah.
So what happens is people get caught in this bind and it's stressful. All the while, almost all other normal countries have health care for their citizens.
Yeah.
It is just crazy that we have the money we have and we have this horrible system that does not serve people.
No, just the insurance companies, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not even the doctors. They're
Oh,
there.
no. For the amount of education it takes
Yeah,
to be a
and work.
doctor
Yeah.
and how much work he does it to serve people.
Yeah.
But the system does not serve him. When I was growing up, a doctor made a good amount of money. They
Yeah.
worked hard, but they made money. Nowadays, you work hard
Yeah.
and you don't make anything because the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies and some of the hospitals are the only people making money.
Gente, o sistema de saúde aqui, eu quis fazer esse vídeo com a minha sogra justamente porque ela trabalha com isso, como eu falei, então ela entende muito de como funciona. Então, essa bagunça. Sempre que eu falo aqui no canal de que, né, do sistema de saúde aqui nos Estados Unidos, eu falo porque eu vejo as coisas que acontecem não só comigo, mas com as pessoas à minha volta. Eu espero que esse vídeo tenha esclarecido alguma coisa pra vocês. Se vocês tiverem mais dúvidas, manda aqui nos comentários que eu faço um outro vídeo com ela, que ela entende, ela vai responder tudo pra vocês. So that's it. That's the video.
Well, what I wanted to say was I was incredibly impressed with Brazil's healthcare system. United States like to act like everything is so great, but when you compare the two countries' healthcare system, Brazil's healthcare system was far, far better than what we have. It is the biggest drain on our economy. It is the biggest drain on families, that it will bankrupt our country if we don't do something. And it is something that's absolutely doable. But we will need to stand up to pharmaceutical companies and to insurance companies who have big, huge budgets for lobbying. So we need to have people that are strong enough to just stand up for what the people need. They need healthcare.
Eu espero que vocês tenham curtido esse vídeo. Não esquece de se inscrever no canal para ver os próximos. Beijo. Tchau.